Dreadwings are one of the most unique machines in Forbidden West, and also one of the more challenging ones. As one of the few flying machines, Dreadwings further distinguish themselves with some specialized abilities like radar tracking, stalker-like cloaking, various state-inducing toxic gases, and the slightly creepy but very cool vampire Leech ability. The Dreadwing's powerful ground and aerial attacks, combined with its irregular movement while in flight, makes fighting these giant bats quite difficult, and sometimes downright frustrating. But don't worry, I've got some strategies to help you master Dreadwing hunting and take them down fast. And of course, I know you guys are after those metal fangs for your gear upgrades, so whether you play with easy loot on or off, the tactics I show you will ensure you get those fangs every time. Everything I show you will be done on either very hard or ultra hard difficulty, and we'll start with a strategy that only relies on a combination of blue and purple rarity gear. But make sure you stick around until the end of the video where I'll show you some more advanced methods. Plus, we'll discuss how to take down the Apex variant, so let's get started. First off, it's important to know that there's only one marked Dreadwing site on the whole map. It's located just northeast of Latopolis, which you visit early in the main storyline. This site won't appear until you've completed the Seeds of the Past main quest, but it's definitely the easiest location for farming Dreadwings, so I do recommend completing Seeds of the Past before trying to farm Dreadwing Components. We also have two unmarked Dreadwing sites. One is in the mountains west of the arena. If you're looking for a serious challenge, this is the one for you, because you'll find both a Dreadwing and a Stormbird here. However, you'll need to complete Cauldron Gemini before you can access this one. The second unmarked site is on the Valley of the Fallen Beach. This one has some red-eye watchers hanging around, but the Dreadwing won't be there until you've completed the Valley of the Fallen side quest. Regardless of which site you choose, you'll need to approach cautiously to avoid being detected by the Dreadwing's radar pulse. Typically, you'll find Dreadwings hanging upside down. This puts them in a semi-vulnerable position that we can take advantage of to target the Metal Fangs. But if you're detected by the radar pulse, the Dreadwing will immediately take flight. So I recommend sneaking up slowly to first identify the pulse radius. Once you've watched a pulse happen, you can either choose to skirt around at a safe distance until you have a clear view of the fangs, or you can sneak closer between pulses to get a better shot. The pulses occur about once every 20 to 25 seconds, so if one has just gone off, you know you have at least 20 seconds to sneak up, and you can actually get quite close without the Dreadwing noticing you. Overall, our strategy is going to focus on keeping the Dreadwing immobilized and making sure we get those Metal Fangs. So our first step is to wait for that radar pulse to finish and then position yourself to target the Metal Fangs. To tear them off, it's best to use tear precision arrows on a sharp-shot bow. These arrows deal tear damage through an explosion, so it's possible to tear off both fangs in a single shot if you land the arrow between them. Don't sweat it if you only get one though, we'll have another opportunity to easily get the other. Now, if you play on an easier difficulty level, or with easy loot turned on, then you don't need to worry about tearing the fangs off. In that case, I'd still recommend starting with a stealthy shot, but I'd instead target the radar unit at the Dreadwing's back. After your initial shot, the Dreadwing will be alerted to your presence and immediately take flight. At this point, we want to ground and immobilize it as quickly as possible. There are a few ways you can do this, but what I recommend for most players is to tie the Dreadwing down with a rope caster. Now, it's possible to do this with a lower level rope caster like the Anchor, but I'd highly recommend you get the elite rope caster from Thornmarsh before attempting Dreadwing hunting. So immediately after landing your first tear precision arrow, you'll want to switch to the rope caster to tie the Dreadwing down. The number of ropes it takes to do this depends on which rope caster you're using and how far you've upgraded it, but with the elite, it should only take 2 to 4 ropes. However, the Dreadwing will be flying around, which can make it hard to land the ropes. If you're having trouble with this, my trick is to pop a smoke bomb first. This puts the Dreadwing into the confused state, which causes it to hover relatively still, making it easier to aim your ropecaster shots. Also, remember you can slide while drawing the ropecaster to trigger quick draw and draw your shots faster. Check out my video on secret combat mechanics to learn more about that. I also find it can help to trigger concentration while using a rope caster to make it easier to aim, just like any other weapon. Remember, ropes can't pierce armor plates unless you at least partially draw them, and overdrawing will give you a bit of extra tie-down buildup. Okay, so now that we have the Dreadwing tied down, we have plenty of time to make our next move. If you didn't get both Metal Fangs off with your initial shot, this is your opportunity to target them again. Now, tearing off the Metal Fangs does deal some damage, which degrades the tie-down state a bit, but if you do it quickly, you should still have some time left to set up for our next step. With the Fangs secured, our only goal now is to deal damage as fast as possible. Of course, there are many different ways you can deal damage, but we want to make this as simple as possible and avoid having to deal with the Dreadwing in flight. I like to freeze the Dreadwing into the brittle state and then use the sustained burst weapon technique with a bolt blaster. Now, Dreadwings are resistant to frost ammo, but only mildly, and in the tie-down state, we can take advantage of a clever trick to freeze them easily. By making sure you hit an armor plate, you can deal the normal amount of elemental buildup, but minimize the amount of elemental damage, which allows you to keep the Dreadwing tied down longer. I like to target this large plate on the wing, but any plate will work. Just make sure you don't hit an unarmored area, because that will quickly remove the tie down. With most bows, it will take a few volleys of triple notched frost arrows to get the Dreadwing frozen, but you should have plenty of time for this. If you run out of time, it's no big deal because our next step will be to tie the Dreadwing down again anyway, so you'll have another chance to freeze it. Whether you manage to get it frozen or not, by this point the Dreadwing will be close to getting free. If you have gotten it frozen, it's often tempting to go straight to your sustained burst, but you won't have much time left, so I actually recommend adding another step here to get a fresh tie down in place. Now, you could wait out the current tie down state and be ready to immediately tie down the Dreadwing again. In that case, I'd recommend popping another smoke bomb immediately after it gets free, which will confuse it and make it easier to rope down again. But if you're a bit impatient like me, then instead you can land a drill spike on one of the Dreadwing's legs. The damage from this will release the Dreadwing almost immediately, but drill spikes are excellent for triggering knockdowns. So, a few seconds after getting free, the Dreadwing will be stunned and fall back down. If you want to learn more about knockdown, I'll link my video on damage types down below. But the important thing to know is that if you want to use this tactic, you'll have to land the drill spike on the leg. No other area of the body will work. And you should overdraw the spike for maximum knockdown damage. While the Dreadwing is knocked down, you can easily tie it down again. So at this point, the fangs should be removed and the Dreadwing should be freshly tied down. If you manage to freeze it during the first tie down, then you're ready to go straight to the sustained burst. If it isn't frozen, then you'll need to freeze it now, and remember to target an armor plate while doing that. For the sustained burst, I recommend heading around the back. From this angle, you'll be able to target a number of components to get a damage boost, including the radar, antenna, stealth generator, and bomb launchers. It's also smart to trigger a Valor Surge first to boost damage even more. I prefer Ranged Master for double damage, but Part Breaker also works well since we're targeting a bunch of components. Keep in mind you can trigger concentration to make it easier to aim with the Bolt Blaster. By the way guys, if you enjoy these machine hunting guides, leaving a like down below would be much appreciated. It helps out small channels like mine, and it lets me know what you guys would like to see more of. Okay, so depending on which Bolt Blaster you're using and the difficulty level, a single sustain burst may be all you need to take the Dreadwing down. But with lower level gear, a single sustain burst often isn't quite enough. If that's the case for you, then after your first sustain burst, you should immediately repeat the same steps we just took. Use another smoke bomb, tie down and freeze the Dreadwing, and do another sustain burst. Or if you don't have enough stamina, a few regular Bolt Blaster shots should do it. So that's our strategy. Start by sneaking up to land a tear precision arrow on the fangs. Immediately tie down the Dreadwing with a rope caster, using a smoke bomb if needed. Remove the remaining fang if we didn't get it on the first try. And finally, freeze the Dreadwing and use a Bolt Blaster sustain burst on components to take it down fast, with repeat tie downs as needed. Now, I realize that's a lot of steps, and they aren't always going to go exactly as planned, especially not when you're still practicing the strategy. So let's talk about how to deal with the Dreadwing's various attacks. First, it's important to have a few cleansing potions ready to go before heading into a Dreadwing fight. Drinking one of these will clear any status effects Aloy takes on from the Dreadwing's noxious fumes, including the damage dampened, stamina drain, and consumables blocked states. For the various aerial and melee attacks, it's best to keep your distance as much as possible. It's easy to lose track of the Dreadwing's location if you're too close while it's flying. And on the ground, you'll be vulnerable to melee attacks that are difficult to dodge, such as the Wing Slash, Spin Strike, and the Hook Crusher. These generate shockwave tremors that are almost impossible to dodge if you're too close. So on the ground, it's best to use a slide dodge combination to get out of the way quickly and maximize your invincibility frames. Check out my secret combat mechanics video to learn how to slide dodge properly. For many of its aerial attacks, the Dreadwing will fly overhead dropping explosives from its bomb launchers. You can avoid these relatively easily by simply dodging or running to the side of the bombing path. The corrosive burst, where the Dreadwing spits acid at you while flying, can be difficult to avoid, but keeping your distance and using the slide dodge works here as well. All of these frustrating attacks are why our strategy focuses on keeping the Dreadwing immobilized as much as possible. Okay, I know that was a lot of info to take in and it can be hard to keep it all straight, so let me quickly show you the gear I'm going to use and then we'll take a look at the live combat demo. For my outfit, I'll be using the Nora Sentinel at level 4 and equipped with its default concentration regen weave along with a basic melee defense weave. To freeze the Dreadwing, I'll use advanced frost arrows on a level 4 Seeker Hunter bow with just a couple of basic frost coils equipped. For our Tear precision arrows, I'll be using the Glow Blast Sharpshot bow at level 5, but I won't put any coils on it to simulate a bit weaker bow. And you can take my word for it that you don't need this bow maxed out to tear the fangs off. You can buy the Glow Blast in Thornmarsh, where you can also find the Elite Ropecaster, which we'll be using to tie down the Dreadwing. Mine's at level 5, but I won't put any coils on it, and similar to the Glow Blast Sharpshot bow, you can definitely still use this even if you haven't upgraded it yet. For drill spikes, I'm using the Spin Thorn equipped with a couple of knockdown power coils. And finally, we'll use the advanced bolts on a level 4 Plasma Bolt Blaster for our sustained burst. I just have some basic impact damage coils on this one, but close range coils would be more powerful. Okay, let's take a look at the live combat. Alright guys, so I'm here at the Letopolis Dreadwing site, which only appears after you've completed the Seeds of the Past main quest. And I'm going to show you, since we have transmog now, that I really am wearing the Nora Sentinel. It's not just the look applied or something like that. And I'll also show you that my difficulty is on very hard and aim assist is on default. Those are the settings I'm using for the whole Master Machine Hunting series, even though we have ultra hard now, just to stay consistent. So I'm going to preload 3 advanced frost arrows, so we have them ready for when we need them. And I'm also going to make sure we have some cleansing potions down in the bottom left there, and smoke bombs ready to go. And while we're waiting for the radar pulse, I'm going to scan him, highlight the metal fangs so they're a little easier to target. There's the pulse. So we have 20 seconds at this point to reposition if we want. And we can get pretty close, which makes it pretty easy to land this between the fangs and get them both. But I'm going to purposely just hit one to show you what happens if you only manage to get one off. And so what we're going to do here is pop a smoke bomb, which puts him in the confused state and makes it a little easier, since he stays a little more still, to land ropes while he's flying. And you can also slide to get the quick draw, which makes drawing the ropes a little faster. So we need that other fang now. And I'll try and show you a bonus tip here. You can actually land tear precision arrows on the ground near a component that you want to tear off. So you see there we got that fang. And that's kind of a nice trick for when he's got both fangs on still, because it's hard to get it in between them on his face when he's got it, you know, kind of buried in the ground like that. So I'm going to start hitting this armor plate with some frost arrows to freeze him. And you do want to make sure you hit the plate and not like the flesh or unarmored areas. And so we have maybe enough time to do the sustained burst here, but not much. So this is a good opportunity. I want to show you what you do in this case. So it's a good idea to take a drill spike. Make sure you overdraw that. Land it on his leg. And it specifically does have to be on the leg. What drill spikes do is deal a lot of knockdown damage with the initial impact, and then they deal some more over time. And so there, it triggered a knockdown because it reached a knockdown threshold. And he's knocked down for 12 seconds, which is going to make it easy for us to rope him down again. And so he's unfrozen, but we'll go ahead and freeze him again. But I wanted to show you guys that knockdown trick with the drill spike, because it's kind of a nice way to immobilize him if you need to. You can manage, if you can manage to hit his leg in flight with a drill spike, that's pretty fun too, and he'll just fall out of the air and be knocked down. But it's a little bit easier when he's like about to get free of the ropes. So we've got him frozen again. We did degrade the tie down state a little bit by dealing some damage with those frost arrows, but not much since we were hitting the armor plate. And so what I'm going to do is position myself around the back here, and I'll trigger my Valor Surge, Ranged Master. You could also use Part Breaker. And then I'll scan him so we can see the components. And I'm going to target these components, trigger concentration, and then R1 to do my sustained burst weapon technique. Go for these components on the bottom, and that was actually enough to take him down there. If you didn't do a Valor Surge, you'd probably need to do at least one more round of that, but I'll show you. There's a fang there, and there's a fang over here. As you guys can see, keeping the Dreadwing immobilized by tying it down is key for making this fight relatively quick and easy. Without those ropes, you'll have to deal with a constant onslaught of aerial and melee attacks, and the difficulty of aiming at the flying Dreadwing, and the debuff stats inflicted by its noxious gases. Remember, the key to our strategy is to quickly get the Dreadwing tied down, using smoke bombs to make that easier. It's also important to do the steps in the right order. There are quite a few steps to master here, but I promise if you practice this strategy and focus on keeping the Dreadwing tied down, you'll get the hang of it and have the components you need in no time. Now, as always, I want to give you guys some alternative tactics and advanced strategies to try out as well. If you're like me and the rope caster makes it a bit too easy for you, then you can use drill spike knockdowns alone to immobilize the Dreadwing for more of a challenge. You could also use knockdown precision arrows or the knockdown shot weapon technique if you don't like drill spikes. Hitting one of the sparker canisters on the Dreadwing's shoulders with a shock arrow is another option for immobilizing it, but they're very difficult to hit, and you can't have both the shock and brittle states active at the same time. We also have some other options for grounding the Dreadwing, though these won't totally immobilize it. Hunting flying machines is one of the few scenarios where I find adhesive, plasma, and even fire actually useful. Normal Dreadwings are weak to fire, and they'll crash to the ground when the burning state is triggered. I'd recommend either fire spikes on the Vindicator or Sky Killer, or fire arrows on the Sunscourge for this tactic. Plasma will also ground the Dreadwing as soon as the Plasma Blast state is built up, and the Plasma Explosion will trigger yet another crash, so Plasma is a bit better than fire for grounding Dreadwings, especially since the Apex variant is weak to it. But personally, out of all three, my choice would be to use adhesives. Adhesive bombs inflict the slowed state that not only grounds the Dreadwing but also prevents it from using some of its fastest ground-based attacks. If you have a powerful frost weapon, such as the legendary Sunscourge, then you can ground the Dreadwing by simply freezing it. Of course, you can do this with a lower level frost weapon too, but it will take longer and give the Dreadwing more opportunities to attack you. These are all good options for taking the Dreadwing out of the air, but remember they won't fully immobilize it like a knockdown or tie down will. Now, if you don't like dealing damage with a bolt blaster, then a sharp shot bow is a great alternative. If this is your style, then I'd recommend still targeting the same components from the back, but I'd use the Power Shot's Valor Surge for maximum damage. Using Ranged Master or Part Breaker with the Focus Shot weapon technique is a lethal combo as well, and you might also consider targeting the Metal Bite Sack on the Dreadwing's throat to deal some good damage and apply the corroding state at the same time. If you like spike throwers, then you could use advanced explosive spikes with either the Splitting Spike weapon technique or direct hits with Spike Trap. I would combo these with the Ranged Master Valor Surge. Normal spike throws combined with power shots also work well. If you have a high level Shredder Gauntlet like the Thunderbolt or Ancestor's Return, then using Shock Shredders will both repeatedly shock the Dreadwing to stun it and tear off its numerous components. Just keep hitting it with Shock Shredders and you'll have it down in no time. You'll easily get the Fangs this way too, but if you want to make extra sure you get them, you can open with the Power Shredder weapon technique directly to the Dreadwing's face. Shredders are one of my personal favorite ways to deal with Dreadwings, especially since the Apex variant doesn't have any resistance to shock. Now, the challenge with the Apex is that it's highly resistant to frost. If you have a fully upgraded Sunscourge, this may not be an issue, but you'll have a tough time inflicting the brittle state with any other frost weapon. Unfortunately, Apex Dreadwings are also resistant to Purge Water, and they don't have any Purge Water sacks or canisters to explode. So using the Drench state to make freezing the Apex easier isn't a great option. They are weak to Plasma, so on lower difficulty levels, using Plasma can be pretty effective, but I think Shock is still the better choice. You can simply use a barrage of Shock Shredders, and if you're good with a Shredder Gauntlet, that works quite well. But if you don't like Shredders, then you can use Shock Arrows on a bow, such as the Lightning Hunter bow or the Death Seeker. Shocking the Dreadwing will ground it and stun it for 20 seconds, which gives you an excellent opportunity to target components with some high damage shots using one of the methods we discussed earlier. Finally, Dreadwings have a cool ability I don't think most people are aware of, so I wanted to share it with you guys. If there are unlooted machine carcasses nearby, Dreadwings will swoop down and use their Vampire Leech ability to suck the energy out of them, triggering the damage amplified state, which buffs its damage by 25% for 40 seconds. And you can actually leverage this vampire behavior in combat. At the beach site, for example, you can kill the Watchers and bait the Dreadwing down to feed on them. While it's distracted, you can deal damage to components or immobilize it with a knockdown or tie down. Alright guys, that's my master machine hunting guide for Dreadwings. Dreadwings are one of the most unique and interesting machines in the game, but I also know how frustrating they can be to fight. So I hope this video helped you master Dreadwing hunting and get those Metal Fangs and other components you need for your upgrades. If you guys have questions or want to share your Dreadwing hunting strategies, definitely leave me a comment down below. And if you enjoyed this video or learned something new, I'd really appreciate you hitting the like button. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.